A warm greeting to everyone. Welcome. Remember that any questions you may have can be left in the comments. Very attentive to respond to the different inquiries. The objective that brings us together today in this talk is to understand what are the foundations of the self-knowledge course. Remember that this is a course where you will learn 75 topics, 75 lectures aimed at teaching us the steps to achieve the awakening of our consciousness. Well, but what does it mean to know oneself? When we talk about knowing ourselves, we are talking about becoming one with our own divine being. We are talking about reaching the highest state of consciousness, which we will call the intimate self-realization of our own being. To know ourselves, we first need to understand what we are composed of. In order to determine our starting point in the process of awakening consciousness and where we're going to end up. So, to delve deeper into this topic, we will discuss that we are composed of three aspects. We are made up of a physical body that we can see and touch. But we are not this physical body. The body is simply a vehicle. A vehicle for what? For the soul or the spirit. It is worth clarifying what is the soul and what is the spirit, since many people tend to confuse them. The soul is a psychic energy that is within ourselves. It is mental energy, emotional energy, instinctive energy, and the very sexual energy. We will talk about how the psychic energy of our soul is currently filled with many defects. In our mind and emotions, there are fears, sadness, states of laziness, lust, anxiety, shyness, self-pity, states of spite, worry, greed, etc., etc. So one of the objectives of this course is to cleanse the soul, the psychic energy, of all the evil that resides within it. In addition to the soul, we have a spiritual part, which we will call consciousness, spirit, or being, the divine being. At this moment, that spiritual part exists in us at 3% energy, and 97% of our remaining energy is trapped in psychological defects. With this, we can begin to conclude the other objective of self-knowledge, which is to make that spiritual part, which is currently at 3%, become 100% consciousness. And that soul, which contains all the defects we currently have, be reduced to zero, turn to ashes, disappear, and thus recover all the virtues that lie within it. When we manage to eliminate all defects and allow our consciousness to develop fully, we will reach a state of consciousness that we will call the intimate self-realization of the being. And we will achieve that state of knowing ourselves. How are we going to achieve that objective? We will achieve that objective through the study of the 4 pillars of wisdom. These 4 pillars of wisdom will be studied through the 75 lectures. Let's talk about each of these pillars. The first pillar is called science, and it will teach us some practices of direct verification, as the study is based on verification, not on belief. All the topics we will study in this self-knowledge course can be verified, and the verification techniques we will teach are as follows. It is worth emphasizing that in the lectures, we will study each of these techniques. For example, we will learn relaxation techniques as it is required to achieve this work. Learning to relax the physical body, learning to relax the mind, and learning to relax emotionally. We will also learn techniques so that in moments of tension, we can learn to maintain. In addition to relaxation, we will teach concentration techniques. Concentration will be very important because we will learn how can we hold a single thought during activity. This way, we can live fully in the moment, in the here and now. As a result, things will turn out much better, in less time, and we will become more productive, not only in our daily lives, but also in our spiritual development. Another practice we will teach is astral projection. This is a practice where we will learn to consciously move in the world of dreams. Most of us dream when we lie down to rest, but we cannot consciously move in that plane. We cannot manipulate the dream at will. So we will talk about how to achieve an astral journey, how to achieve the famous lucid dream, as it is also known. Through that astral journey, we will be able to verify many things, such as, for example, we will be able to communicate with our divine being. We will be able to remember past lives. We will be able to speak with our divine mother. We will be able to know the purpose of our existence. So it will be something wonderful. We will discuss this topic next week. We will also learn meditation techniques. We will learn how to enter the sixth and seventh dimensions and reach a state that we will call samadhi, penetrating into the world of spirit. This image illustrates the world of the body, which is where we currently are. There is another world, which is the world of the soul, and there are other worlds, which are the world of spirit. So we will learn to quiet the mind to escape to those dimensions. In addition to this, we will learn meditation practices to eliminate traumas, fears, vices, etc., etc. Another practice we will also teach will be the practice of negotiating karma. This will be lecture number 13, in which we will study what is karma, what is dharma, and how can we pay off karma without suffering from illnesses, misfortune, or crises. So, there are more conscious ways to do this, and we will discuss all of that in each of the lectures. This is a small preview of everything we will find in the self-knowledge course. Now, let's talk about the second pillar of these 4 pillars. Remember that the course is based on the 4 pillars of wisdom. Now we will discuss the second pillar. The second pillar is known as art and aims for us to learn to develop the spiritual part. The only way to give life is through sex. So, we will teach a type of sacred sexuality, also known as a famous tantric sexuality, supersexuality, or supersex. This type of sexuality is based on not spilling sexual energy, as is currently done in society, through orgasm or ejaculation. Instead of that act of expelling energy, we will learn to transmute it. Transmuting means converting the liquid state of matter into seminal vapors, which will rise through our spine, and then that energy will be directed to the brain to create the spiritual bodies. The existential bodies of the being. In this course, we will discuss that there are 7 dimensions of nature and that there are vehicles or bodies to move in those dimensions. Through the technique of supersexuality, we will be able to regenerate the physical body and the vital body. And we will be able to create the other spiritual bodies. We will be able to create the astral body, the mental body, and the causal body, and unite with the spiritual bodies, which are the buddhic body and the atmic body. The first foundation is chastity. Chastity means that when sexual union takes place, there should be neither orgasm nor ejaculation. That is the basis of tantric sexuality. Instead of pouring out the sexual energy, we are going to teach some breathing exercises to transmute the energy. The second foundation is fidelity, where one should have only one partner of the opposite sex. That person will be the one who will help us to do this work. The third thing that the conjurations need is love. To love the person with whom we are going to perform this practice of supersexuality, and that the focus of the practice is the development of our own consciousness. Having these principles as a base, we are now going to talk about each one of the steps to perform this technique. The first step, already having a partner of the opposite sex, our wife, or, in the case of the woman, her husband. Then we are going to go to the place, which will be the nuptial room, and in this place, we are going to do the energetic cleansing techniques. These techniques are the chanting of the Belilan and the magic circle. We are going to teach these techniques in lecture number 7, in case you are not familiar with them. After having done the energetic closing, we will proceed to make a supplication to the Father and to the Divine Mother. The Father represents the inner wisdom, and the Divine Mother represents the love that dwells within each one of us. Once we do this little prayer, in which we ask them to give us concentration, imagination, and will to not spill the sexual energy, to help us to be very relaxed, and to help us to control the mind. It is a petition or a small prayer, very short. Then follows the step of conscious kissing and caressing. In this step, the person will begin to activate the sexual energy through kisses and caresses in order for the male to get his phallus erect and the female yoni lubricated. Once the sexual organs are ready, prepared, we proceed to what is known as the sexual union, which is also known as lingam yoni. This sexual union, once it takes place, requires each of the participants to concentrate on his own body. The male will have to concentrate on his spine and brain, and the female will also have to concentrate on her spine and brain, but not on the partner. We are going to need a lot of concentration. We are going to need imagination. I am going to explain to you what it is that we must imagine, and we will need willpower. Sexual transmutation is based on the breath. So, once the sexual connection is given, you should start inhaling the air. Inhale through the nostrils. The idea is that it should be a very, very long inhalation, hopefully 20 seconds, if it is our possibility. Then we inhale. Imagine the air going down into our stomach, and imagine the air going down into the sex glands. That's where we're going to have to imagine. Once we imagine the air going down into our sex glands, we hold our breath. We hold our breath. Once we hold our breath, now we're going to imagine that air mixes with the energy that is in the sex glands, and we imagine that the energy now goes down to the coccyx. Once the energy reaches the coccyx, we begin to imagine how a golden thread goes up our spine, up to the brain, and finally reaches between the eyebrows. Once we have imagined that the energy reaches the space between our eyebrows, we will exhale the air very slowly. As we exhale, we will pronounce a mantra or a word of power. This mantra is mantra I. We will pronounce mantra I. Imagining that the energy expands through our head, and from the head, it expands throughout the body. Once we have done this mantralization exercise, we are now going to pronounce mantra A. We inhale the air again, we hold the air. We imagine that now it goes from the sexual glands towards the coccyx. We imagine how it goes up the spine, reaches the brain, and when it reaches the space between the eyebrows, we pronounce the mantra A, elongated. After doing this exercise, we inhale the air again, we hold the air. We imagine that it goes to the coccyx, goes up our spine, reaches the brain, up to the space between the eyebrows, and we pronounce the mantra. While imagining how the energy expands through our head. Once we do this exercise, we can feel how the sexual potency decreases. That is to say, the erection decreases and the lubrication decreases. In this case, it is necessary to make soft movements to recover sexual potency. Once the sexual potency is recovered, go back and do the exercise. Go back and inhale. Hold the air. The energy goes up to the spinal cord of brain, and then again repeat the same breathing exercise. Again, inhale. Hold and exhale with the A, and then inhale. Hold and exhale with the 0. Very important. The idea of this practice is not to spill the sexual energy, not to reach orgasm, not to reach ejaculation. You have to avoid overexcitation. One will make movements to recover sexual potency and start breathing exercises, but never overexcite to avoid orgasm or ejaculation. This exercise is repeated until the sexual potency of either person is totally lost. Once the potency is lost, it is withdrawn without spilling the sexual energy. At that moment, the practice of spiritual birth is finished. As we advance in this practice, we will notice how the energy begins to condense in the spinal column, and the development of the spiritual bodies we're talking about begins. First, the physical body will regenerate, as the first 33 vertebrae condense. Then, the vital body will regenerate when it condenses a second time. And progressively, the astral body, the mental body, and the causal body will be fabricated to finally unite with the other spiritual bodies of which we have spoken today. Before moving on to the next topic, it is important to keep in mind the following recommendations. The first recommendation is that this practice should be done only once a day, that is, every 24 hours. Every 20 to 24 hours, the practice can be done. Second recommendation, as soon as we finish the practice, we should not bathe immediately. You should wait at least 2 hours. The third recommendation is that this practice cannot be done if the woman is in her menstrual period. In this case, it is necessary to wait the 7 days that the menstrual period lasts. Neither can this practice be done during pregnancy, nor while the woman is breastfeeding. These are the basic recommendations for this practice. I want to tell you that we will go much deeper into this topic in another lecture, number 10. Today we are just giving a little taste of how we will handle sexuality. This is the second pillar of wisdom, of creation or self-knowledge. Now we're going to talk about the third pillar of this course of self-knowledge. This third pillar is the pillar of psychology. The objective of this pillar of psychology is that we learn to eliminate those psychological defects we were talking about today. Remember that our soul is full of many psychological defects. Among them, we find laziness, pride, envy, and each one of these defects has trapped a percentage of our consciousness. Then, the objective of this pillar of psychology is to learn how to eliminate each one of these psychological defects so that later, after some work, all that liberated energy ends up becoming spiritual consciousness. There are many defects. Defects, in general, move within ourselves in the centers of the human machine. There are some defects that take over our verb and make us scream, make us morbid, make us act, make us suddenly fall into vice such as masturbation, pornography. But in addition to moving in our motor center, they also move in our mental center. They make us imagine things. They make us remember things. They make us plan misdeeds like how to steal, how to adulterate. They make us imagine a lie. But not only do they enter the mind, they are also at the emotional level. At the emotional level, we feel fear, anger, jealousy, anxiety, depression, and so on. And if we look further down in the energy or in the sexual center, we will find how it moves, many times morbidness, impotence, lack of sexual appetite, which can also become a defect. In short, there are many defects. And what we have to learn is to eliminate each one of these defects because, as I said, each defect has trapped a percentage of our consciousness. Now, how are we going to eliminate the defects? We are going to explain the step by step. The first step to eliminate a defect is that the person wants to change, wants to free his consciousness. For this, it is necessary that the person begins to self-observe. What are you going to self-observe? He will self-observe the doors through which the psychological defects manifest themselves. These doors are the thoughts, the mind, the emotional part, and the sexual part. Then we are going to be attentive, aware of what we think, what we feel, and what we desire, as well as the sensations in our sexual center. That is self-observation, being attentive. When we are in this process of self-observation, a moment will come when we will discover the defects. Let's give an example. Let's say in the morning we get up early. We start to self-observe. And we see the bed unmade, we self-observe. In our excitement, we start to feel laziness. We feel laziness. And if we keep observing ourselves, a thought in our mind says to us, "Now, later I will fix the bed." And in the sexual instinctive part appears the action of leaving the bed unmade and leaving things unfinished. If we are in self-observation, the idea is that we begin to judge ourselves, each one of our defects, to analyze if this emotion that I feel is my conscience. Then if I analyze, I will conclude that this emotion is not my conscience, but it is the defect of laziness. If I continue in self-observation and that thought that said to me, "I will make my bed in a moment," later, then if I judge that thought, I will realize that this thought is not my conscience either. It is the defect that likes to postpone. And if I observe this desire to leave, I will realize that it is the defect of omission. So, the second step is that each defect that I observe in the emotional part, in the mental part, or in the sexual part, is judged, is analyzed, until we become conscious that it is wrong. It does not serve us for the awakening of the consciousness. Once we conclude that this thought or this emotion is wrong, we will go to the third step. The third step is to make a mental petition. We are going to say, Divine Mother, remove this defect from me. Then, Divine Mother, who is a force of love within us, will eliminate the defect that we have observed. In the example that I proposed to you in relation to laziness, as soon as we feel the emotion of laziness, we become conscious. No, this laziness is not of my being. We make the petition. Divine Mother, remove this emotion from me, the procrastinating thought. Divine Mother, remove this thought that is telling me to procrastinate, and the action. Divine Mother, kill me this defect that does not want to make the bed. Then, when we eliminate the defect, the conscience is liberated. In this case, we free a percentage of the virtue of laziness, which is called the famous diligence or industriousness. But if we begin to do this exercise, we will realize that in daily life, many defects emerge. For example, greed. At a given moment, we are in self-observation, and we don't receive any money. Then we may begin to feel sadness because of greed. We feel sad because that money didn't come. We think we are failures and we want to cry. But if we do the exercise, we self-observe, we feel that emotion, and we realize that it is greed. We make the petition. Divine Mother, remove this defect from me. That thought that tells me I am good for nothing. I judge myself. This thought that I am thinking is masochism. It is of no use to me. Divine Mother, remove this thought from me, this desire to cry. I judge myself. No, this is weakness. This does not serve me. Divine Mother, remove this defect from me. If we begin to do this exercise in our daily life, we will become aware of how we begin to eliminate more and more our psychological defects. And we begin to liberate consciousness until we reach the point or the moment in which we achieve the awakening and liberation of 100% of the consciousness. That is a very important pillar. There are going to be several practices in which we are going to teach how to eliminate the ego. For example, there are going to be conferences in which we're going to talk about how to eliminate the vice of drugs, of alcoholism, how to eliminate the defects of the personality, how to eliminate the defects of lust, how to eliminate the defects of fanaticism, of mythomania, how to eliminate the defects of witchcraft, how to work on the different attachments that live within ourselves, how to eliminate grudges. Well, in this course of self-knowledge, there will be practices where we're going to teach how to learn to forgive, how to control the emotional part, and all of that is part of the pillar of psychology. To finish, we're going to talk about the last of the four pillars, which is a pillar of mysticism or sacrifice for humanity. This pillar is very important because its objective is that everything we learn about the process of the awakening of consciousness, we share it with other people. Wisdom is not to be kept for ourselves, but wisdom is to be shared. That is the pillar that will give us the strength to do the work of the awakening of consciousness. Because every time we teach this knowledge to others, we are going to receive, in return or in payment, we are going to receive spiritual strength, understanding, and dharma. This concept of dharma we will also study in a lecture, which is the laws of karma and dharma lecture, which we will also study in the self-knowledge course. Important things we have to keep in mind when we're going to teach this knowledge. First, that we have to teach the knowledge for free. We cannot charge anything. If we charge it, it becomes a business, and it would no longer be mysticism or sacrifice for humanity. Second, it has to be done without distinction of race. Creed, it is for everybody. Free will has to be respected. That is very important. And we are not going to mix it with some other knowledge or with some other religion, nor are we going to add to it or take away from it. If we fulfill these requirements, we will begin to feel how that spiritual force begins to vibrate within ourselves. We begin to feel what true love is, because that is what love is. It is helping other people to awaken, and we are going to be able to move forward on this path. Now to finish the explanation of these 4 pillars of wisdom. If we are practicing these 4 pillars of wisdom, which I remind you again, the pillar of science, which teaches us to verify, if we begin to communicate with our spiritual being, if besides that we begin to practice supersexuality and we begin to create ourselves, and besides that, we begin to eliminate all these psychological defects and we teach humanity how to awaken its consciousness, then we will gradually integrate this process of awakening until we awaken 100% of our own consciousness. What are the objectives of self-awareness? We have already talked about some of them, but let's remember them. The first is to achieve the self-realization of the being. Remember that self-realization is to reach that maximum state of consciousness. Second, we are going to regenerate our physical body, and we are going to begin to achieve human regeneration, because also, by sharing this knowledge, we are going to contribute to society, to liberate all our consciousness, to create the existential bodies of being, of which we have already spoken. We're going to know each one of the laws, because each time we create these spiritual bodies, we're going to know and manage these laws to learn how to transcend them. We will also get to know the higher dimensions. That is the objective of this course of self-knowledge. As I was telling you, it will be synthesized in 75 conferences, which are completely free of charge. I would like to leave you with this phrase from one of the Greek philosophers. Man, know thyself, and you will know the universe and divinity. Thank you very much for joining us. The next lecture will be lecture number 2, which is called What is Death? What dies and what doesn't die?